am Arjuna Herath, partner Ernst & Young in Sri Lanka. I have with me Mr. Amit Midha, who is the real resource person for this session today, with whom I'll be having a chat to really tap his thoughts on the future and on digital cities. Our title is of the session is Digital Cities or Connected Cities. And just sort of create a context for our discussion. I think we have clearly seen that cities have been centers of innovation and economic growth throughout our history and have been the catalyst in progress of nations. And I saw a recent estimate by 2050, urban areas are expected to be home for 68% of the global population, which is staggering. This is not going to be any different in Sri Lanka. We are seeing a lot of urbanization, lot of developments, real estate development that happens, high rises to accommodate the people who are migrating to the cities. As cities continue to evolve, transform, and grow, in the recent history, technology has been playing an increasingly critical and differentiating role in the way cities function. As the next generation digital technologies get more pervasive, they have the potential to transform the fundamental fabric of our cities and in turn deliver on key citizen outcomes, which are going to be more efficient and inclusive, more economic growth and for opportunities, and establishing a sustainable environment, and thus driving a better quality of life for all of us. So it is in this context, this discussion is being conceptualized and formulated around the theme and concept of digital city. As I said, we have with us today Mr. Amit Midha, who is the president of Asia Pacific and Japan for Dell Technologies. Amit is also the president of the Global Digital Cities Business for Dell Technologies. And has a lot of business perspectives and works across the world in addition to specializing in these aspects. So Amit, thank you very much for joining us, and it is great to have you, and looking forward to your thoughts. Amit, my first question to start off our discussion is whether you will be able to explain the concept of digital city, indicating how the cities of future will evolve and transform in relation to this concept. Over to you, Amit.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Arjuna, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here, and I appreciate the time. My definition for digital city is very simple. It is a city that thrives in the fourth industrial revolution. So if I give you a bit of history on the revolutions, and industrial revolutions. So you can think about somewhere in the late 1700, early 1800, you have a steam engine and railroads and coming up. Then, mid to late 1800, you have factory operations running, and, much later in the 20th century, you have computers and digitization happen. And what we are seeing now is a new kind of industrial revolution where data becomes the value. And data and data-related industries are the ones that's going to create better kind of job. And so that's what we are going through. And this is going to continue for next 20, 30, and even longer. And in that context, everyone, every city, every society, every individual has to think about how to transform themselves, how to find a path where they can be more thriving and more successful in that context. And Sri Lanka has a now unique advantage that work from home is well accepted. These digital jobs can be done from anywhere. This data related opportunity exists uniformly across the world. And I think that's the opportunity. So I would say a digital city, we can talk about technology all day long, but it is very simple. It is there to help societies, individuals, countries transform themselves so they become economically successful, they have a better quality of life, they have better healthcare, they have better education, and they have better mobility. all of these things come in a way that creates better economic opportunity for all.
Yeah, so no, that's great. That's great. So I just want to I saw in a recent survey, my question is around this, and I will allude to the survey. My question is, do you see real digital cities emerging in a way that is impacting society and life? Why I'm asking this is in the context of the survey that I really came about. Where 11 global cities included, which included Moscow, Astana, Wellington, Hong Kong, Johannesburg, London, New York, New Delhi, Ottawa, Sydney, and Singapore, right? And the survey ranked these cities in the elements of 6 digital service categories, which was transport was one. So about digital services around transport. Then I'm trying to get the rest elements: information services, utility services, state services, public Wi-Fi and access to Wi-Fi, and then fintech were the elements of this survey. That the survey, looked at these elements and tried to assess how each of these cities were performing against these. And New Delhi came number 1 in ranking. Now, if you go to New Delhi and if you go to look at New Delhi, and I was not sure whether we felt the impact that New Delhi may be number 1 in these respects. So my question to you is, one thing is, are real digital cities in the making? How do we really make an impact on citizen? How will this entire concept evolve to make a real impact on citizen? Is the question that I'm trying to get to, Amit.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think cities are responsible to their citizens and their constituents. Technology should be used for the citizen outcome, not for the sake of technology. So in my mind, that's a critical point. So if you think about what we're doing I can't particularly comment on that survey per se, but I can say I live in Singapore, and I have been amazed at the whole government, how well they have managed pandemic, how good the logistics and transportation system work, how essential services have been delivered, how easy it is to interact with the government. I give you one example. To file my taxes, government calculates my tax bill and everything before the deadline date. They send it to me through an app. I don't need to go anywhere. I don't need to sign anywhere. I don't even need to sit down and collect all my receipts and everything else, already filled in. And now vaccination wise, I'm going for vaccination tomorrow. And I've heard that I will be in and out, like literally I arrive and I'm out there within 15 minutes. So everything is scheduled, everything is tied. So government really has become an app. It's as easy as downloading an app, whether it's about my social security, whether it's about my my taxes, or whether it's about my immigration issues or visas, anything. Everything is literally an app. So my point is, that's the ease of doing business at the end of the day. That is the ease of interacting with the government. Now, you go beyond that. Government should not do everything. Government has to set the policies, set the conditions, set the infrastructure, so the private sector can build on top of it. So from that perspective, here in Singapore, the government has set the standard for pay now, and now multiple entities are offering pay now based services. Just like in India, UPI has been built. Using that, many of the banks and everything else are interacting with each other in terms of money using UPI. So government has to set those infrastructure. Government has to set the policies. Government has to set the incentive so that takeoff can happen. But beyond that, at the end of the day, government shouldn't have to do everything, because there is not enough resources within government to think about all of these things. Environment and quality of living is very important as well. Pollution is important. We have to provide next generation talent wants to live where they can interact with other high quality talent, but also have a great quality of life. So I would say the digital city needs to make sure it is sustainable, it is energy efficient, it provides a high quality of life. It is easy to interact with the government, government is transparent and clean, and government set the right policy for private sector to come in and build more businesses on top of that. So a lot of promising ideas here, but again, survey could be different depending on time and who does it. Singapore has consistently been rated as #1 digital city in the world in most amount of surveys.
Yeah, no, great. No, I totally agree. And I think these are very useful thoughts of, and at the end of the day, it's about impacting citizen. And clearly Singapore's use cases that you just now mentioned as clear hallmarks of, Singapore traveling that journey. So Amit, we have a brand new city in the making in Sri Lanka, the port city. The reclamation has just completed. Utility infrastructures have been laid, and they are now trying to market this city to be a completely modern city. Not a very big city, but it is going to be a kind of a city because they want to have separate legislation to it will be positioned as a city for investments and so on and so forth. Now, my question to you is, do you see an opportunity to apply the concepts that you elucidated and you are elaborating at the port city, given that is a brand new city coming up? And what is the kind of a roadmap that you see they should adopt in order to get to the concept of a digital city that you possibly define? And I have heard you talking around the leadership and policies that needs to be in place, the operating model and processes, and also the community and the ecosystem that you want to build. So, if you can talk around this, I think it'd be a lot of value for Sri Lanka, to see, is there an opportunity to actually bring about this concept at the port city?
Sure. I think there's a lot of other cities who are going through this, greenfield projects. Toyota Woven City in Japan. You have a New Clark City in Philippines. You have NEOM in Saudi Arabia. You have Egypt New Capital. Cairo New Capital, Egypt New Capital, or Cairo near Cairo. And you also have in Jakarta, there's a new capital being completed. All of them had to go think this through. But what is common in all of them is that they are focusing a lot more on green sustainability and livability aspect of things. 2, they all have public-private partnership. So they're not trying to do it alone because it's just too much to kind of go build this. They want the best ideas to come in from all sides. They want the local partners. They want the global partners to help them build on a rapid manner, but also in a manner that is best in class. Then everything they do needs to be interoperable. So no matter what decision gets made today, tomorrow, no matter what decision gets made, they have to support these decisions. I think it's important because city is not something that you can decide for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. This is for next 50, 100 years. So these decisions have to make sure they make sense even when they're seen much later in time. We also have to provide the talent base, right? Sometimes you have to import talent from outside as well. How do you get the right talent to get this started, to set the right policy? And then, of course, what is the objective? So kind of manifesto. So the manifesto of the city has to be clear. What does city stand for? What is the city going to deliver for us? And then how we're going to do it. That's kind of the framework I see. In any digital transformation, there are 3 elements to this. It's always people, process, and technology. So now you can start by 4 objectives. I'll say port city. Can we do this? Build a city where the livability is number 1 in Southeast Asia or in the world, right? Let's just say 1. 2, could we make sure the city works without paper? Everything is interaction. All the interactions are digital, so base speed increases dramatically. Can we make sure the city is well connected in terms of technology, in terms of in and out, from logistics perspective? Because that's how the Hong Kong became what Hong Kong became. Can we also make sure that the city has the best, culture of living with each other, different nationalities or different communities, and really build a truly global city that if you're starting out, why not dream big and make it really such an amazing city that people talk about it. So I look forward to coming and visiting Port City, and hopefully being part of that as well. But again, we are here to help in any way you would like us to participate in terms of thought leadership or best practices or anything else we can provide.
Yeah, no, great. Thanks. Very useful thoughts around that. And I think you alluded to two things. In response to a question earlier, you talked about technology is only an enabler for cities to create, the opportunities and to solve the existing challenges. You also spoke just now about having to get the people on board. And I think you sort of, I suppose, in order to make an impact, I've sort of seen you talking about, having the people lean into change and to accept change. And then, of course, this is basically with the collective effects of public-private cities partnerships, the citizens, interacting and integrating. I just want to understand from you, or whether you can shed some lights on how do we get the citizens on board to traverse this journey of the future cities that we want to create. Is there any thoughts around that you can share with us?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, people now are spending so much time on media. They are seeing global cities, what's happening in Hong Kong, what's happening in Singapore, what's happening in Dubai, what's happening in New York City. And intuitively, they know that no city is fully perfect, but there are many elements of the city that they would like to bring in to their city. And that's the fundamental point. There has to be a case made. There has to be a vision that has to build. I can share with you some of the drawings of the Neom city or Woven city. They have put a dream out there, and then citizens buy into that. In fact, this is how cities take shape. There is plenty of money in the system that people will help make these cities happen. They need to be told what the dream is, how they can happen, and then they buy into this. In fact, any public project that makes livability better makes all real estate in the city prices go up. So all the folks know that by doing things right, it's a significant economic return. They also want their citizens, their children, to have better access to opportunity and live in a better place. That's an intuitive sense. That's a cultural sense as well. So they want to make sure they're part of the story that they believe is real. And three, they want to make sure that this doesn't have the risk. That means right partners are there, there's no political risk, and everyone is kind of really see it through. That's the third piece of risk, is the highest one in my mind. If there's not enough money, if there's not quality partners, or if the timeline is too long, then people don't participate because they believe in that scenario it won't be successful. But if you can build one city right, imagine if you can have 10 of these in Sri Lanka, where Sri Lanka would be. I mean, it's an amazing city. It's the jewel of the South Asia. And so in that scenario, working from home and having these world-class cities within Sri Lanka can give you the platform to engage with the world, which is at a different level. And it creates prosperity and economic integration like never before. I think that's the dream we have to communicate.
Sure. No doubt about it. Thanks. So, Amit, in a concept of digital city, I'm trying to get to some applications and some, of what could be done specifically. In fact, relating to technology, because I want to. Generally, a lot of us has this notion of a sort of a digital city being technology connected and driven, and you gave a broader aspects to this whole thing, but I just want to get to that because I think there may be some interest in that area. So in the concept of a digital city, we found that services relating to transport, health, education, these are all very primary services that people are really are critical for people. And just my question is, are there any specific applications areas that can make a huge impact? I think we know about telehealth, we know about education platforms, but I just want you to sort of just give us a feel for one or two of these areas, how you see it evolving, or how you see what the roadmap should be for a country like Sri Lanka to really have these use cases inbuilt in to really travel journey and give some quick wins to the people.
So I think first and foremost, safe city is the foundation block. If the city is not safe, nothing else can happen. The next building block is it has to be urban mobility. The transportation within the city and from city and into city has to be world class, because that's exactly what we enable through technology. Then the third block is how do you handle the health and education? And fourth block is government as an app. That means everything is as easy as dealing with an app. And then the fifth one is sustainability and green energy and smart grid and the solar and all the rest of it. So that's kind of the stack I can see. So the simplest level, do you feel safe walking alone on the street at 1 a.m. in the morning, right? That kind of is the first fun, simple question. Second one, urban mobility. Is your time from point A to point B is very predictable? And is your speed, average speed, north of 40 kilometers an hour or 40 miles an hour, depending on where you live? It has to be average, including all the stops. It's just simple scenarios, that's the urban mobility scenario. Third, if you look at health, do you have access to best healthcare specialists and education specialists in Sri Lanka or in the world? This is what digital technology provide. And fifth, is your city generating at least 30% of its energy through green resources or through solar? And is your government is working for citizens and is very easy to deal with? That's kind of the 5 things we'll say. And all of these 5 things has a tremendous amount of technology, modern infrastructure, people, and process that make these things happen. And I think that's what is amazing. Today, Singapore isn't built in a year, but now when you see all of these things come together, you can truly see the power of digital city and what digital city can create. But the point I was saying this earlier, these are the many use cases that are making a great digital city. But why you do it? So you can be thriving. In many ways, city becomes alive and thriving with the changes. Every change is a challenge and an opportunity. Cities who do not really build the right infrastructure from people, process, technology, they struggle with the changes. And the cities they do, they actually thrive with the changes. And that's the idea, that these 5 use cases with the right technology and people and process can help you thrive with the changes, with the data era, with the 4th industrial revolution. And that's why we do it. Citizen outcome will be, I'm living in a safe city that is sustainable, that gives my children the best access to healthcare and education. My government works for me. It's easy to deal with. I have the best infrastructure from mobility perspective, and I have a great economic future ahead of me.
Yeah, no, great, fantastic. We have only 3 minutes, even though we can talk a lot about this. I just want to end the session with the question coming from the audience. The question goes like this, maybe Amit, in 2 minutes, if you can get to this. What about protecting smart cities themselves from vulnerabilities, especially in Sri Lanka? How can we defend against hacking, cyber attacks, and data theft? How do we trust that participants are who they are and say they are? And how do we know the data they report is true and accurate? So it's a very broad question, but just see whether you can answer this in 2 minutes, Amit.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. We all have to think and make sure this is the primary thinking as we digitize cities. And the thinking right now is that infrastructure needs to have intrinsic security. So in other words, when I think about if you go into a party, you have to bring an invitation, and invitation wise, you can go in. But this is the reverse. It's a new process, doesn't have to come and say I have invitation. It's like these are the only 4 or 5 things you do, and that application can do. If 6 person and 6 process comes in and say to application, send your data here or do this, application won't do it. So fundamentally, it has to be grounds up. Security is not an afterthought. It has to be built grounds up. And this issue comes very closely when you have autonomous cars, right? Or electrical cars, where it's not that the that they can be hacked. If you build the model of a data center into a car, we will fail. So a car should only be able to do 5 things that nobody can touch. And everything else, if you want to touch on the entertainment layer, or if you want to touch into AC layer, yeah, maybe there's more flexibility. But core driving function, there's only 4 things that are embedded onto the chip, onto the application that nobody can mess with. That is how you ensure the security is given and no external nefarious activities can be done on top of that. So a lot we can talk about in the security, but I'll try to say intrinsic security is the name of the game, not the security as we have done, which is a add-on or which is a patchwork.
Great. Thank you, Amit. Thank you very much. It's been very interesting talking to you. Thank you for joining us, and and for the support that you're extending to Sri Lanka. And we are all hoping that we'll be able to see you more often in Sri Lanka, and also looking forward to seeing you in Colombo.
Absolutely. I look forward to coming visiting you. I love the country. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.